A man can only truly be himself when he is solitary. If he experiences love, he ceases to be his authentic self, according to Arthur Schopenhauer. There arrives a pivotal moment, a silent, soul-shattering instant in every man's existence when his illusions begin to fracture. He observes the very aspects he once pursued with unwavering devotion: love, companionship, the vision of a shared future with someone who whispers assurances of understanding. But what if all of it were a deception? Arthur Schopenhauer didn't merely question this. He dismantled it entirely. This was a man who delved into the obscure mechanisms of human desire and refused to avert his gaze. For him, romance was not a path to salvation, but rather a seduction by nature itself. A trap, a beautifully adorned prison. What the world celebrates as affection, he termed delusion. What most people acclaim as intimacy, he revealed as biology cloaked in the guise of fantasy. And what you perceive as connection, he recognized for its true nature: suffering in disguise. In Schopenhauer's view, the fundamental distinction between men and women was not solely physical, but also metaphysical. Man strives for ideals, concepts, philosophies, and creation. Woman, he asserted, clings to the immediate, the practical, the survivalist instinct. In his words, women remain perpetual children, never seeing beyond what is directly in front of them, adhering to the present moment, and mistaking the appearance of things for reality. For him, this was not an insult but an observation, a lens through which to view the very nature of the mind. And what, then, is beauty according to Schopenhauer? It is merely a facade, nothing more than biological bait designed to seduce, to disarm, and ultimately to ensnare the mind of man. He posited that a woman's beauty was not a gift to the world, but a snare intended to weaken a man's judgment, to divert him from his pursuits, and to reduce him to a servant of his own urges. And it is effective. Time and again, men, builders of empires, shapers of history, warriors of principle, have succumbed not to armies or ideologies, but to the soft voice and gentle touch of a woman they could never truly comprehend. Schopenhauer contended that women, lacking the capacity to exert force or conceive grand ideas, instead mastered the art of subtlety. Their power was understated yet potent, an influence not over the battlefield, but over the bedroom, the household, and the very desires of men. Where men constructed the world, women shaped the men who built it through charm, through emotion, through need. And yet, society romanticizes this, labels it love, and pretends it is sacred. But for Schopenhauer, it was a transaction dressed in poetry, a biological imperative disguised in sacred vows. Love, he wrote, is not what it seems. It is not the meeting of souls or the destiny of hearts. It is a trick. The will to life, as he called it, acts blindly through us to propagate the species. And it has no concern for your peace of mind, your personal happiness, or your ambitions. Its sole concern is that you reproduce. And to achieve this, it whispers fantasies into your heart and presents illusions before your eyes. It tells you she is different. It convinces you that this time it is genuine. And by the time you discern the truth, you have already surrendered. Schopenhauer viewed marriage not as a sacred bond, but as the final act in a man's decline, a legally binding illusion, a contract signed with hope but paid for with regret. He believed that once a man yielded to the enchantment of beauty and promise, he was no longer free. Marriage was not about love. It was nature's biological strategy to ensure reproduction, and the man, blinded by emotion, was reduced to a beast of burden. He toils, he sacrifices, he subverts his will not for glory or meaning, but to sustain a structure that often leaves him feeling empty, depleted, and bound. And when beauty fades, when the enchantment wears off, what often remains is resentment, silence, a quiet disillusionment. The very liberty he once possessed, the freedom to think, to build, to traverse the world in pursuit of truth, is replaced by duty, responsibility, and routine. Schopenhauer wrote, "Marriage is a trap set by nature, the will to live wrapped in illusion, and the bait a woman's smile, her softness, the promise of connection. But beneath it all," he argued, "is instinct, survival, repetition. This is not animosity, it is a warning." He regarded women not as villains but as unwitting agents of nature's design. Their aim is not personal malice, but the fulfillment of their biological imperative, to seek security, to ensure their own survival and the survival of their offspring. And to achieve this, Schopenhauer claimed, women developed a superior skill set in emotional influence, not logic, not strength, but persuasion, cunning, intuition. And it is in this arena, this emotional battlefield, where so many men are defeated, not because they are weaker, but because they are unaware. They engage with logic in a realm governed by instinct. They reason where they should resist. Schopenhauer observed that in this arrangement, men often become pawns. They construct the house, but it is no longer their own. They strive in their careers only to relinquish the rewards. They harbor dreams, but their aspirations become diluted by the weight of obligation. And all the while they convince themselves this is fulfillment, that the sacrifice is noble, even necessary. But beneath it all, many feel the gnawing ache of something lost. A voice they no longer hear, a passion that no longer burns, a version of themselves buried beneath layers of compromise. He cautioned against this fate, not to condemn women but to awaken men, to open their eyes to the forces at play, to see through the illusion before it is too late. He addressed men not as adversaries of women, but as seekers of truth. Because in Schopenhauer's philosophy, it is not woman who destroys man. It is man's ignorance of woman, his romanticized delusions, his failure to comprehend what drives the dance of attraction and what it often costs him. The tragedy, then, is not that men love. It is that they love blindly. They surrender their very essence to a notion they've never scrutinized, mistaking mere longing for predetermined fate and deception for genuine sincerity. And when the mirage eventually dissipates, when reality takes hold, they are left with more than just wounded hearts. They are left with shattered lives. Schopenhauer's genius resided not in his cynicism, but in his perspicacity. He peeled back the layers of sentimentality and laid bare the underlying mechanisms, the raw, unfiltered forces of nature that propel us all, whether we acknowledge them or not. He perceived men not as oppressors, but as victims of their own yearning. Men, he argued, are inherently noble, rational, driven creators of thought and civilization. They construct empires, produce masterpieces, unravel the enigmas of science, and grapple with profound philosophical inquiries. Yet, all of it, every achievement, every iota of progress, is susceptible to collapse the instant a man succumbs to unrestrained desire. For once a man falls under the enchantment, he begins to serve not his own purpose but hers. He becomes willing to forsake his own mission for the approval of another. He starts to compromise his principles for ease. He reshapes his identity to be more palatable, more agreeable, more desirable. In doing so, he loses sight of his true self. And Schopenhauer regarded this as the most devastating betrayal, not of society, not of principle, but of the self. What is the value of a man who forgets who he is? What befalls his spirit when he no longer lives for truth, but for validation? Schopenhauer noted that many men are not broken by adversity, war, or poverty, but by love, or rather by the illusion of it, by the subtle venom of dependence. And it is here, he argued, that women, consciously or unconsciously, wield power because they do not need to dominate through force. They dominate through need, through presence, through charm, through silence. They seldom demand obedience, men offer it. And they rarely request sacrifice. Men volunteer it. And thus begins the gradual erosion. First, it is the time he once dedicated to his aspirations. Then, it is the passion that once fueled his craft. Then, it is the solitude that once gave rise to his ideas. One by one, these foundations crumble until the man who once stood tall is now kneeling. Not in reverence, but in resignation. His purpose becomes mere upkeep. His joy becomes the avoidance of conflict. His aspirations diminish to accommodate another's ease. And yet, the world lauds this, labeling it maturity, responsibility, even love. But Schopenhauer urged us to question, what if it's not growth but capitulation? What if the man who extinguishes his inner fire isn't progressing but withering? He believed the truly enlightened man perceives beyond these deceptions. He harbors no animosity towards women. He comprehends their nature. He doesn't dismiss love, but recognizes it for what it is, a force to be respected, not idolized. And most crucially, he safeguards his inner being from being consumed by the very things that once promised joy, but only delivered distraction. This is not an exhortation to isolation, but to mindfulness, to take a step back and inquire, am I the man I was intended to be, or have I transformed into someone else for the sake of tranquility, attention, or fleeting gratification? Schopenhauer's voice is not one of rage, but of caution, a quiet yet persistent truth resonating through the ages, beckoning men back to themselves before it is too late. In Schopenhauer's philosophy, the most elevated form of man is not the lover, the husband, or even the warrior. It is the philosopher, the one who discerns the game for what it is and chooses not to participate, the one who turns away from the clamor, from the allure, from the accolades of others, and instead confronts the silence within. He believed that only through detachment could a man attain freedom. Only by relinquishing the illusion of fulfillment through others could he begin to comprehend his true essence. He pointed to the great solitary figures, Buddha, the Stoics, the saints and sages, who walked alone not because they were unloved, but because they were unwilling to exchange their inner peace for transient affection. They saw through the mirage of romantic salvation. They chose wisdom over warmth, clarity over comfort. And it was in that solitude, Schopenhauer argued, that man discovers true power. Not the power that lords over others, but the power that repossesses the self. This path is not for the multitude. Most will dismiss it. Society will deem it cold, detached, even resentful. But Schopenhauer did not pen his thoughts for the masses. He wrote for the select few, the men who are prepared to see, the men who have endured enough to question why, the ones who have pursued love, lost themselves in the process and now seek something genuine. Not validation, not solace, but truth. And the truth is this: a man who does not comprehend his own desires is governed by them. A man who does not understand women is susceptible to their influence, and a man who constructs his identity upon the assurances of romance will witness that identity crumble when those assurances are shattered. Schopenhauer challenges every man to ask, are you awake, or are you living someone else's dream? This is not a dismissal of love. It is a call to love differently, to cherish your intellect, to honor your purpose, to embrace the stillness that speaks when the world falls silent. Because the man who can sit alone with his thoughts and feel no emptiness, no yearning, no ache for something more, that is the man who cannot be controlled. That is the man who is truly free. So, if you are watching this and something within you stirs, If something feels painfully, uncomfortably true, do not flee from it. Sit with it. Sit with it. Allow it to incinerate the illusions you have been holding on to. Permit it to strip away the falsehoods you were told about who you need to be and what will make you complete. You were never intended to live in shackles disguised as comfort. You were never meant to perish in a life constructed on compromise. You were meant to perceive with clarity, to walk alone if necessary, to rise not because someone commanded you to, but because you recalled your true self. Let Schopenhauer's stark truth serve as the mirror, not so you can despise the world, but so you can cease being deceived by it. And once you see clearly, that vision remains. If this message has opened your eyes, share it, like it, and allow other men to hear what they were never told. Because the truth will liberate you. But first, it will shatter everything you thought you understood. If this video stirred something within you, if it challenged your way of thinking or made you see the world even slightly more clearly, do not let it end here. Like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear this truth, and subscribe for more content that speaks to the intellect, not just the fleeting moment. And if you believe in this message and wish to support this endeavor, consider joining the channel membership or checking the support link in the description. Your support helps keep these conversations alive and expanding,